and welcome to Be Rich, our annual generosity campaign. For those of you who are familiar with Be Rich, welcome back. To those of you who are joining us for the first time, I could not be more excited that you're here. Now, I don't need to tell you, but the world looks a little different this time around, right? A global pandemic, economic instability, social unrest, and an election year. And I don't know what all that means for you, but for many here in Kankakee County, that means the need is greater than ever, which makes Be Rich more important than ever. And we're so grateful that at this time of the year, when we join together to give, serve, and love, that you've chosen to be a part of it. Be Rich is a title that is lifted from one of the Apostle Paul's letters. In 1 Timothy, he wrote this, where he said, "Command those who are rich in this present world." And by the way, if you have more than you need, you are rich in this present world. Command those who are rich in this present world to do good and to be rich in good deeds and to be generous, willing to share. Notice he says those who are rich in this present world. We resist the idea of being rich, but again, by international standards, if you have more than you need, you're rich. Simply put, Paul is calling us to be rich toward others because God has been so rich toward us. Since Jesus has been so rich toward us, we should be rich toward others. So, for the past 13 years, a group of churches have come together to give, serve, and love their communities. And collectively, we've made a really big difference. If you've been a part of Be Rich in the past, you've made a big difference. So beginning today, once again, we're about to put the power of collective generosity to work right here in Kankakee County and across the country and world. This year, Be Rich, we're going to include 68 churches, including GatheringPoint, in 21 states and 6 countries, which collectively will involve 113,000 people who are going to participate in this party of generosity. If this is your first time, here's how it works. Over the past couple of months, we've been working with nonprofit partners in Kankakee County to determine what will make a big difference for them and what will empower them to make a big difference for Kankakee County. And our hope is that all of you will give, and then 100% of what is given will be given away. There has never been a better time to give, and there's never been a better time to serve, and there's never been a better time to love, to be for Kankakee County. And every little bit that you give will make a difference, and collectively will make a big difference. Now, in just a bit, we'll talk about what's in store, our partners in Kankakee County. But first, our friends will share with us a song, and Pastor Paul will share more about being rich. Thanks for participating, and thank you for being rich.
How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope.
Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. And hallelujah, praise the one who the morning that sealed the promise, your buried body began to breathe, and out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me.
Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Oh, Jesus, yours is the
It's time again to be rich. The part where we look at what the Apostle Paul said to his protege Timothy. He said, when you get around rich people, you're going to have to command them. You're going to need to command them because when you tell them that they're rich, they're not going to believe it. So you're going to have to be a little bit more than like suggestive. You're going to have to do more than just kind of explain it to them. You're going to need to command them. And the Apostle Paul writes this letter to Timothy, and he says, when you get around rich people, he says, you need to command them and tell them, because they're not going to know they're rich. You're going to have to tell them that rich isn't a feeling. They're not going to one day wake up and go, oh, I feel so rich, so I should be generous. He says, that's never going to come. And he says, but if we never feel rich, we're never going to act rich. So the Apostle Paul says to his protege Timothy, this is what he says. He says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. And our question is, even in a pandemic, I mean, does it make sense to still do this in a pandemic? Maybe we should say today, especially in a pandemic. Because recently I've been hearing this question a lot. I've been having people say, you know, isn't the Apostle Paul asking us something about this? And what about me? And what about the things that I need to take care of? And aren't we all kind of in the same boat? And have you ever had somebody say something to you and they tell you, hey, we're all in this together, or we're all in the same boat, and people may say that and you just kind of nod along, right? Have you ever done this? It could be something else. They say something and you sort of nod and you're like, oh yeah. And then later you go, I don't think I agree with that at all. But you just found yourself nodding. If you get that, I understand that, because I paused and I sort of nodded and then I kind of realized, you know what, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, I understand the comment, don't get me wrong. I agree we have all been impacted by the pandemic. I completely agree with that. But I disagree. I don't think we're all in the same boat. And I want to take a little bit of time to offer some clarity to what we're talking about, because without clarity, usually things just get muddy and we just sort of make uninformed judgments or comments. And so first of all, I don't think we're in the same boat. Now, some of you are in the boat that is suffering severe damage, and you're wondering if your boat is even going to survive another week, another month, through the end of the year. Others are just kind of weathering the storm just fine. And people are like, we don't have any toilet paper. And you're like, we got plenty of toilet paper. We're doing fine. Our business is good. Everything's going to be okay with us. And see, you kind of realize we're not all in the same boat. So maybe it would be better for us to articulate and to say, we're all in the same storm. And I think this gives a lot of validity to the things that Jesus says when he was talking to his disciples, and he encounters this moment when he's with his disciples out in the water, and they're all in the boat, and they're in the middle of a storm. And the fascinating thing is Jesus is in this moment, but you know what? He doesn't say a word about boats. In fact, he doesn't really say, the only thing we know about boats is that he and the disciples are in a boat. But they don't really talk about that. And so in Matthew chapter 8, verse 23, we find this passage. He says, when Jesus gets into this, when he gets into the boat, his disciples follow him, and a huge windstorm arose on the sea. So great that their boat, the boat that they were in, which means, were they the only boat on the water that day? No. Were all the boats in the water that day impacted by the storm? Yes. Are all the boats on the water the same size? No. But this boat had a lot of people, and it's a small boat. I've been there at this place in the Sea of Galilee. I've physically been there, and I've seen boats all over the water, and it's fascinating to watch, and they all have different colored sails, but they're all different sizes. And they get in this boat, a windstorm arises, and so great their boat was being swamped by the waves. But he was asleep. And they went and woke him up, saying, Lord, save us, because we are perishing. And he said to them, guys, why are you afraid? You have little faith. And then he got up, and he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a dead calm. And then they're all like amazed and kind of freaked out, but mostly amazed. And they begin to process this. And so what we want to look at this is, does this mean all of the boats in that storm were ready to drown? No. So I think it's fair for us to say that we're all in a storm. We're all in the same storm. And if you're in an inflatable raft right now, you might be in trouble. In fact, you feel the effects, you feel the pressure, you feel that with your kids, you feel that with your marriage, you feel that at work or your lack of work, you get that and you feel like you're in trouble. And if you're in this storm right now, this pandemic right now, and you're in a canoe, guess what? You might drown. That's a reality. But if you're in this storm and you're on a cruise ship out on the Sea of Galilee, this storm's not going to kill you. It's going to inconvenience you. But it's not going to kill you. Which is why I believe Jesus talked to the storm and he didn't address the boats. I think this is why he talked to the storm, because there were other people out on the lake that night and they were all in the same storm, but they were not all in the same boat. And isn't this true for you? And isn't this true for me right now? I mean, not everyone has seen a huge impact in your personal finances. Some of you have experienced the worst. Some of you are looking at your checkbook. You just looked at it this morning and went, oh man, I don't know. Some of you have been affected in your businesses by supply chain being messed up. Some of you have had toilet paper that you haven't been able to find for 2 weeks, right? You remember when toilet paper was the defining moment that decided if you were rich or not rich, is how much toilet paper you had? Many of you are still out of work or are still furloughed. Everyone has had something canceled. Vendors, hotels, trips, retail shops, restaurants, side gigs. I mean, many of those, sports, they're all in limbo. So we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And so Jesus in Mark chapter 14 says something, and when you hear it at first, it sounds kind of insensitive. I mean, it's just kind of insensitive. And in chapter 14 of Mark, he kind of continues on this thing, and he says this thing. He says, look, for you always will have the poor with you. And you can show kindness to them whenever you wish. He says, but you'll not always have me. Now, when he says this, I mean, some people have misunderstood this teaching, thinking that Jesus doesn't care about the poor, or he's saying, oh, the poor will always be around, so don't worry about it. I mean, you'll be able to get that next week, and it kind of seems that God betrays them or has disregard for everyone who's in different boats, right? And he has preferences to some boats over other boats. Except this isn't evidence that way. In fact, when we see Jesus come, we see him embracing more than anyone else the poor, the outcast, the broken, the naked, the despised, the despaired. All of those are the people that Jesus naturally gravitates towards. But when Jesus says this, he's actually going back to an Old Testament passage in Deuteronomy. And when he runs all the way back to Deuteronomy, this is where Israel is told that there will be no more poor among you. And so it almost is like Jesus is contradicting what Deuteronomy said, but I don't think he's contradicting anything here, because he says, listen. The voice of the Lord, the voice of the law, says there will always be the poor. And Jesus just said the poor will always be there, but Deuteronomy says there won't be the poor, and that's quite a contrast. And so when we get into this moment, we find this thing, and we see that Jesus is telling us something, and it's a very, very famous statement what he's saying. He says in Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 4, he says, when you begin to find yourselves in these moments, he says, remember, you will be provided for, you will be given much. And when we get over to Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 11, he continues and he says, open your hand to the poor and needy neighbor in your land. Offer them the dignity of generosity. Love them in a way. Be rich to them. Continue to open your hand. Now, I get it. I've done this. You've done this. We've all done this. We all have this tendency to monitor our own boats. Is my boat going to make it? How well is my boat going to make it through the storm? Meaning, we're all doing what we can to protect our own. We're all doing what we're trying to do to make sure that we ensure our lives and our families make it safely through this storm. I get it. And so when we talk about being rich and being generous and giving towards others, we kind of go, whoa, I think that's a little too costly. I think it's a little too costly to engage with other boats right now, because if I engage with other boats, my boat may not make it. And some of us always have this excuse that we're so busy right now to lend ourselves to something bigger than ourselves. And to those of us that think $5 here or $10 there, I mean, that's just enough and it'll just be content and people will be able to figure those pieces out. And Jesus says this. He says, whoever devotes themselves to themselves will have nothing but themselves to show for. Let me say it again. Whoever devotes themselves to themselves will have nothing but themselves to show for themselves. So here's what I've noticed and here's what I've found, and this is what we're going to talk about over the next couple weeks. I've noticed in our county, in Kankakee County, that not everyone is in the same boat. We're all in the same storm. We're all being impacted by the same restrictions. We all have the same, positivity rate that kind of is encasing us and all that. But we're not all in the same boat. We're in the same store. This year, as we've kind of looked at Be Rich and we've talked about this moment of generosity that we give for our county, we've selected a couple great organizations who are helping people whose boats are in trouble. And we want to reach out to them and we want to be generous to them. One of them is Harbor House, and Harbor House is one of those organizations that helps people in domestic abuse. And I don't know if you know this, but do you know that the second most prosecuted case in Kankakee County is domestic violence? And there's been a 60% increase in hotline calls, which equates to like 500 more calls already during this year, during this pandemic, because of domestic abuse as a result of the storm that we're all in. And so Harbor House exists to empower individuals and families, communities by providing domestic violence program, advocacy, preventions, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that. Another organization that's just helping out so much is Blessings in a Backpack, and you've heard about schools helping with lunch and breakfast and stuff, but on the weekends there's a gap. And Blessings in a Backpack helps deliver meals on the weekends to students in need. And there are 16 schools in our county that they're involved in. And last year they would deliver like over 300 to 300 kids. And this year they're up way over that as a result of this storm that we're in. And so in a minute, what we want to do this year is we want to invite you. I guess we could be a little bit more bold and take the words from the Apostle Paul, if we could, without you being offended. The Apostle Paul commanded us to be rich. And the way that we do that here at Gathering Point is we say once a year, one Sunday a year, we want everyone to give $39.95. Why $39.95? Because we've all wasted $39.95 on something. From either Walmart, Target, or Amazon, we've spent $39.95 on something, and we don't even know where it's at. We don't even know if it works. We don't even know where all the parts are for it anymore. But we believe that this is $39.95 that will make a huge impact because we're not all in the same boat. We're all in the same storm. And this is our moment to be rich. So I want you to learn just a little bit more about these great organizations who are helping people in this storm right now. Watch this video.
At Harbor House, our mission is to empower individuals, families, and communities by providing domestic violence programs, advocacy, and prevention. A lot of that starts with our emergency shelter and our hotline. Individuals get connected with us. They come into shelter, and as they're working with their case manager and the program, they're able to set a budget and work towards their personal goals. And a part of that process, we then have transitional housing. That's an opportunity for survivors to begin in their journey of freedom, of independence, of healing. So right behind me is one of our transitional apartments. I foresee in the future that this transitional apartment is a place of comfort, is a place of safety, is a place of rejuvenation as you heal from potentially years and decades of abuse, physical violence, sexual violence, economic violence, and not being able to think of your own dreams. Here is where dreams are going to start coming alive again. And that's not thanks to me, that's not thanks to us as a staff, that's thanks to the community and thanks to Gathering Point Church. Through adapting this area, it's going to recreate somebody's story. It's going to play a part in their journey.
Well, my name is Dan Harris. I am the Family Community Liaison here at Kennedy Middle School in Kankakee. I've been involved with Blessings in the Backpack for 7 years, and oftentimes someone from a nearby church will bring packaged food here at Kennedy. And what I normally do is to go to the different classrooms and hand them out. Sometimes if students are not here, I'll go to their home and pass them out as well. Earlier in the year when the school closed in March, part of my job was to take food to the homes of the children who normally would have gotten food here. And so I was passing out food a lot to a lot of families. But because of some of the issues that they're dealing with in terms of financial poverty, I'm sure there'll be an increase in them needing food for their home. When I bring them food, you should see the look on their face. Because oftentimes what we do bring them, even though it may be little, it ties them over through the weekend. We have a lot of children who may be home, latchkey children. Their parents may be out because we have a lot of single parent families in our school district. And so that little bit could help tremendously to get them from weekend until Monday.
Two outstanding, life-giving organizations rowing their boat, and now we can come alongside and add more wind, more fuel to their work. Through your giving here at Be Rich, we're adopting the apartment suites in need of updating and adding an additional suite, transitional housing for survivors of domestic violence at Harbor House. In this storm, they are seeing a significant increase in calls and intake of survivors. We're also giving to Blessings in a Backpack, as their need has increased from providing meals for 300 kids to now over 400 kids through 16 schools in our county. So here's how to give. Again, we're seeking 100% participation. It's not a dollar goal, but a participation goal. And we will give all of it to our Be Rich partners. There's 2 ways to give: text to give or through our app. If you have the app, open it up, and at the bottom, click on Give. Then, one-time gift. Input $39.95 or whatever total you'd like to give and select the designation of Be Rich. Follow the prompts to complete your gift. If you don't have the app, texting to give is also quick and easy. The number to text is 45777. In the message, type $39.95 space GP space give. Now it's important to include the dot and also the spaces that you can see below. For those of you that choose to mail in your giving, that's still all right here during Be Rich. All right, that's a lot. Feel free to scroll back and watch the instructions once again before making your gift. You all set? Okay, let's give. Let's be rich.